Okay, so thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. Me and my collaborator CC's not here right now. It's a little early for him, but we've been doing a lot of speed run videos, and our goal is to talk to people that are in the community themselves. And so
that's me.
Yay, that's you. So like I said, thanks for taking the time, and we won't take too much of your time. We'll try and run through the whole thing. Can you talk to me a little bit about what got you into speedrunning?
Well, I don't remember too well. I just know that way back before I started, I often watched speedruns on YouTube already. A lot of TASes. And eventually I found out about GDQs. Once I watched those and noticed or realized that actual people do speedruns too, I made an account on Twitch, and I watched at first Worster and Narcissa Wright, or back then Cosmo. And at some point I wanted to do my own speedruns. I actually started out with Pokemon Emerald. I only did that for like a month because I was really bad.
No, that's a brutal game too.
It is, especially if you just start out speedrunning. But yeah, I was looking for other speed games. I actually didn't do speedruns for like 4 months. And eventually the Minish Cap Any Percent tutorial by Tokyo Boy was in my suggested videos. And I was like, well, I like Minish Cap and I want to speedrun another game. This game has a tutorial for it, so I might as well choose this one. And that's how I came to Minish Cap. And I stayed here for pretty long now. Almost 5 years.
Almost 5 years. Wow.
Yeah, that was in December 2013.
But so Minish Cap was your first speed game, or did you play? I mean, I know you said Emerald, but was there other?
Yeah, Pokemon Emerald was 4 months before that. Then was Minish Cap. I also ran Four Swords Adventures and Crystal Chronicles for a little bit, and Odyssey, but Odyssey I only did 2 runs.
Beyblade.
Beyblade, please. I did that for like 2 days.
Odyssey looks like a lot of fun, but I don't like doing games that like are constantly changing like that. You know?
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, the run needs to settle down a little bit before I want to dedicate time.
I can understand that.
And I'm one to talk. I play Mario Kart, so I'm not I'm the Mario Kart
is always
guy.
the same.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, rip blue shells. So so your first run of Minish Cap, and that was when was that? Was it early 2013 then?
It was in December 2013. I don't remember the exact date, but it was December 2013.
Do you remember what time you had?
It was a 2:16 something. It should still be on my Twitch page somewhere. But 2:16 was pretty good back then for a first run. My second run was actually 10 minutes slower, but we don't talk about my second run.
What made it 10 minutes slower?
I forgot the route.
Oh boy. So you start playing the game. And you were playing on emulator at the time?
Yeah, exactly.
So were you, if my understanding of Minish Cap history is anything is at least a little bit decent, the emulator ban was like right around that time, right?
It was about 5 or 6 months later, I believe.
Yeah, August.
Yeah.
So
it was when Bracelet Skip was found.
Do you have an opinion on the emulator ban?
Back then I didn't really care, and nowadays I don't really care either.
It's a good answer.
I always wanted to, or I wanted to do runs on console just because I feel like it's more pure that way, if that makes sense. A lot of people prefer console runs compared to emulator runs. But I always liked having emulator as an option, just so that people can do runs themselves. I mean, I started out on emulator too, because that was an option back then. So it makes the game a lot more accessible. So I don't think it's a bad thing to not have it banned anymore. The ban back then was justified because emulators back then were a lot more inaccurate, and therefore there were a lot of time slaves just strictly for emulator. Nowadays that we can run on Wii U, which have the same, or not the same, but similar time saves, we decided that emulator rules are also outdated since we do allow Wii U, and we should just unban them, which we did. So
It's like the whole story in one little neat package. So you'd wanted to run on console for a while. Which version, when you started, did you run on?
I started out running on JP because that was the fastest. The text was
Right.
faster. I know other people did run on US before, which I never understood because JP was just faster, but I started with JP.
Right. I think when we spoke to Atroz last night, he said that it was because MB was using and holding out on US, so he wanted to only compare himself to like who he thought was the best runner at the time.
Yeah.
And
But
he
then
didn't
again,
want
why
to
did
get
MB choose US?
Yeah. Hey man, good. These are all good questions. You're almost interviewing me. So you get the Japanese and you get a 20302 like right away, right?
216 was my first run. I actually didn't do runs for a little bit. I did like one run every month up until June, July, August. I don't remember. That's when I started doing runs almost every day. I don't remember
Right.
if it was June or July, but I improved pretty quickly. Eventually I did get a 203, and then the Bracelet Skip was found, and then emulators were banned. I already ordered a copy of JP Minish Cap before the emulator ban even went through or was discussed, because I wanted to run on console anyway. But because of the ban, it was, of course, even more of a reason to run on console.
Right. Can you talk to me a little bit about what boss key skip is? I know everyone in this room knows, but can you just explain it a little bit?
Sure. In Fortress of Winds, the third dungeon, MB rules back then found the boss key skip, which is done by using a glitch called portal items. Basically, you just use the moments on the portal, which pushes you back a little bit, and then if you jump off the portal, you are a little bit inside the wall, but you don't quite make it up there. But with the help of a bomb boost, you get pushed up the wall so that you can walk on the wall and skip the boss key that way. It's actually quite lucky that it was found because it depends on subpixels, which we can manipulate in the run now, but it's also just a 4-frame trick. So the fact that it's dependent on subpixels and only 4 frames makes it quite a lucky find.
Right. Doing some quick math here. So you have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Looks like you have 19 world records.
I don't know the number.
2014. Yeah, right. Why would you?
For any percent.
For any percent, yeah.
Honda's probably a few, yeah.
So you would take breaks from any percent. What were you going off to do? You'd go off to play 100%, or you were playing Crystal Chronicles, you said?
It really depends. I just randomly take breaks in this game. There's usually no real reason. Sometimes I just don't feel like playing the game. From any percent, when I was grinding a lot of runs, I also wanted to do Hundo at some point. I don't really remember when I did Hundo. I think it was also in winter, like 214 or something. When I did Hundo, it took me quite a while to learn the route because Hundo is actually pretty involved. There's a lot of things to learn. And I think that's when after the 153.17, I believe, I started out doing Hundo. And I took a break from any percent for quite a while because of it. Just because it took so long to learn.
So for 100%, how much longer of a run is that over any percent?
100% right now is 4 hours and 3 minutes.
Goodness gracious.
It's longer than any percent, definitely. Back then, I think MB had the record. It was like 4:40, I believe. So it actually went down by quite a bit, almost 40 minutes.
Wow. Okay. I'm just looking through the script here. Sorry about that.
Sure.
Do you have a time that you're particularly proud of among all of these world records?
I think the 1:52:52 is the most iconic one. I think most people in the Minish Cap community knows that time.
What's special about it?
That was the record. Well, first of all, I grinded for it for quite a bit. It took me a lot of months after 1:53:17 to get the 1:52:52, and that record stood for like more than a year, I believe, and no one came close to it. So a lot of people still know that time because it stood for such a long time, and no one was able to beat it until DBX came along. But yeah.
Well, then, didn't you end up beating it? Like, you lowered it down another...
I think I beat it first, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually tried for a long time to beat it, but, you know, there's always in speedrunning some sort of barrier. Once someone gets a certain time and can beat it for a bit, it's gonna stay there forever. And once you beat that time again, it's actually quite easy to beat it multiple times. I don't know why that is, but it happens in so many different speedruns. And once I did break the 1:52:52, I actually got 2 runs after another that beat it, so...
Wow.
But that took a long time.
So you were in this tournament, right?
Yeah, the first Minish Cap tournament.
Well, tell me a little bit about the tournament and what you remember most about it.
Ooh, what I remember most about it was that Blue did it, and it was actually quite well done. It was his first tournament that he ever made, or organized rather, and it was very well organized. People had a lot of time for it to prepare. We had a lot of new runners coming in because of it, and the tournament itself was just really fun. We had Fiesel for the restream. We had a lot of commentators. Everyone was really enthusiastic and did a lot of research on the run about the lore, about the tricks, and everything just worked out really well. It was a lot of fun.
Right. You so you ended up in the finals against MB. Can you tell me about that final game in that race, I guess?
Well, I don't really know all that much about it because I was running.
Right.
But racing against MB, of course, it's pretty special because MB was the first one who really grinded runs for this game, besides Atros. But MB, of course, was also always in the first place. So MB always has that, I don't know, mystical aura around him, I guess, just because he's been there for forever. And it felt really special to race him.
Well, yeah, you ended up winning, right?
Yeah.
Right.
He didn't do all too many runs. He did a few to prepare for the tournament, but a lot of his strats were also still old and outdated, so he lost some time to just normal stuff that he didn't know we had faster strats for nowadays. But he still got really good times in the tournament. It's actually ridiculous.
Do you feel like if he had more updated strategies that you wouldn't have beaten him?
I'm not sure. I think because I was just more used to everything more than him at that time, because I did a lot of runs, I just had more consistency overall. But it's always hard to say because Minish Cap has Octo, has Vadi and Georg and everything, so everything can happen.
What is your least favorite part of the run?
Least favorite? It's definitely the RNG bosses. I'm not sure if Octo or Vadi is worse. Because Octo you can lose like 20 to 40 seconds if you got 0 ink in your PB before. But Vadi, you sometimes just lose a minute or 1.5 minutes.
Or the run.
Or the
Can you
yeah, I mean, basically.
Can you talk just a little bit about what makes the Vadi fight so kind of difficult or up in the air?
Everything. Well, Vadi has 3 phases. The third one is actually the easiest one. That we don't really need to talk about that because it's very consistent. The first one, sometimes after a cycle, Vadi can teleport around, and I usually always get bad Vadi ones in that he teleports around for like 15 seconds or something. He teleports 5 times until I can attack him again, or sometimes 8 times or whatever. And that loses quite a lot of time. Sometimes you also get an extra cycle, and the reason for that isn't really clear. Sometimes it just happens, which of course also loses time, and it's just a quite annoying fight. For Vadi 2, I mean, how do you even explain Vadi 2? If you see one bad Vadi 2 once, then you'll know everything, but basically you shoot the eyes first. They are RNG, the locations that the correct eyes are in, but that's not really a big of a deal. The thing is, you also have to clone them and hit the eyes with 4 links. But while you're charging the sword, Vadi can move around and push you somewhere, push you against the wall, make you lose all the power you've charged, and you have to start all over again. Sometimes he stops in front of or not in front, but on top of the clone tiles, which then you have to wait 7 seconds or something for him to move again. And it's just so dumb sometimes. Just everything can happen in that fight. You can have such a good fight and then such a bad fun on the next run.
Can you talk to me a little bit about your current world record and how you got that time?
That was actually an offline PB. I only ever did like 3 offline runs. And the first offline run also was a really good run, but I died on Vadi 3. We don't talk about that. The second one I don't really remember, but yeah, the third one was then the 144. I actually wish I streamed it, but my internet wasn't working at that time. Since it was actually only supposed to be a warm-up run to get back into Minish Cap again, I went for Bracelet Skip, which is usually not something you do for RTA. Bracelet Skip is in Palace of Winds. You can get a cutscene ocarina glitch, which is a 1-frame trick, and you only get 1 chance at it. If you miss it, you lose 1.5 minutes. I went for it, and I did get it first try, so I saved 1 minute 50 seconds, something around that. So actually quite a lot of time. And I also got the other cutscene ocarina glitch in Palace of Winds, which saves another about 40 seconds or 35, something like that. So it was a really good Palace of Winds overall, which ended up saving a lot of time compared to my PB. And the rest of the run was also just pretty good overall, especially the Vadi fights, which then ended up PBing by quite a bit. I actually didn't play all that well in some of the parts because I was still rusty, but because I hit all the tricks and got a good Vadi fight, it ended up being a pretty nice PB.
Nice. What about, I think Quo told me that you have done a lot of glitch hunting?
Yeah, probably the most out of everyone.
So what are some of the glitches that you found?
What do I start with? Probably jumping over loading zones, because that's probably my favorite one.
The most relevant of the glitches.
The most relevant, exactly. It's not relevant. Is it used in Hundo? A version of it is used in Hundo, but not really. But yeah, it just means that, as I said, you can use items on portals. And I also found out that you can move around with that if you use the Gust Star. And if you are on the portal and move around, if you move close to a wall, you can actually jump over it. And if that wall is a loading zone, so not an actual wall, you can also jump over that loading zone, which then puts you on the next screen, but the screen we were on before is actually still loaded. So you are on the next screen with nothing loaded in there. It's actually quite similar to boss store clipping, which I also found, which is also used in the any percent route now. But that trick is really cool because it feels like there's so much potential, even though it's not useful yet. But with maybe 1 or 2 more things that we could have, then it might end up being a really interesting glitch in the run. Most likely for 100%. I don't think any percent, but it looks really cool because you can do a lot of pixel vomit stuff with it. But yeah, that's probably my favorite one.
Okay. Is there anything, Quo, that I missed or that we should definitely get for the interview?
Uh,
I would think maybe
Not-
Flipper Skip.
oh, true. You also found or helped find that.
Flipper Skip. We tried for ages to find a way to skip the flippers. I remember even when I started, Flipper Skip was something that people wanted back in 2013. Everyone kept trying and trying, but we just couldn't find anything until I found Boster clipping. But that trick alone actually doesn't skip the flippers. It was actually a really cool time for Minish Cap, because once that was found and we found out that we can also do it with the magical boomerang. Initially I only thought you could do it with the lantern, but magical boomerang also works. And once we found out about that we can do it in Temple of Droplets, everyone came together and tried to find a way to skip the flippers. Until eventually Yadra won 1-1, I believe. God, I always forget the numbers. Found a way to enter the blue teleporter room early, but it was subpixel dependent at first. So everyone once again came together until we find some setups that also worked so that we could manipulate the subpixels. And it was just a really cool time that the community all came together to find a way to finally skip the flippers again, now that we had more options to use. You know, we can finally skip the flippers. Yay, 5 minutes faster.
I've gone through all my notes. Quote, is there anything else?
I don't think so.
Is there anything, Toad, that you would like on the record? That all your runs were spliced?
I'm sorry, Darky.
I wish. You know, it's actually funny. Maybe it's something that would be funny to mention. Back then, I didn't really have much competition when I grinded the game a lot, when I got all those good times. And for a while, I actually thought that I just had a faster GameCube because I couldn't explain the faster times myself. So I actually ended up timing my GameCube compared to all other runners' GameCubes because I couldn't believe it either. It's actually one of the funnier things because I couldn't explain it myself why I was so far ahead of everyone else. But yeah, it didn't end up being the GameCube.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You know what? I'm glad. I'm glad that it ended up being the GameCube. I'm glad that you're
Me
just really
too.
good at this game, you know? All right, well, I'm going to turn the recorder bot off.